Late round draft picks in fantasy football and best ball feel like the least important part of the draft, but they might actually be the best and the most important part of the draft. If you hit on a late round pick in best ball, in a best ball tournament, if you hit on Eli Mitchell 2 years ago, if you hit on Rashad Penny or Geno Smith, all of these late round picks over the last couple of years, you crushed your best ball season. So today, here on Spike Week, on Monday Night Best Ball, we're going to figure out who are the best late round picks in all of best ball and who are some picks who are not getting drafted in every single draft using our ownership projections that can give you a huge edge in your best ball drafts right now. Let's do it.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
So for some behind the curtains action, everybody's used to my dogs being in front of the curtains and being a shit show and barking and I appreciate everyone for dealing with that, but I had the finger on the trigger to go live to do the cold open, and someone came to our door and my dogs were like zonked next to me, right? Like completely passed out. We had just went for a walk right before this. And the moment I went to go click that button, someone came to the door and they're go crazy and go running towards the door. And so it's always something, but I feel like they're excited. People are coming to the house to get excited for some late round picks. And I actually think that this subject is maybe one of the most under discussed parts of like all of best ball. People will talk about like, oh yeah, all whatever. They're all lottery tickets. They're all right. They're all just pick your favorite late round guys. Everybody has different. Some people draft a ton of the same guy. Some people spread it out on their 17th and 18th round picks. I actually think this is the biggest edge you can get over the field in terms of if you're right. Like Cooper Kupp 2 years ago, shout out to our good friend Felix, who won the DraftKings Millie. Like he drafted like 75% Cooper Kupp, but still Cooper Kupp was drafted in every single draft.
Yes.
If you hit right, Eli Mitchell was drafted in like 3% of drafts that year. And so like you can extrapolate, like if you just take 20% Cooper Kupp and like 10% Eli Mitchell, the next thing you know, you have like this absurd portfolio of hits. And everybody just writes off the late round picks. And I feel like we can like dig in a little bit better and find some guys, not even just like that we know better, but like maybe some guys that aren't getting drafted or some strategies around late round picks that I think we can really like gain an edge on. And so I'm excited to have this conversation here. The chat's late round guys, your late round guys, and some of our projected really low owned late round guys.
So you say that Griffey and Taz got excited and exuberant because someone came to the door. What I think they actually got excited about is that I personally don't have to draft 35% Dearness Johnson this year, hoping that he gets traded.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what they got excited for.
Oh my God. The Dearness Johnson bags last year were very, very heavy. Very heavy.
Like, it felt like a can't miss lottery ticket, right? It just felt so like, yeah, of course I'm taking Dearness Johnson. He's either going to be the number 2 in Cleveland or he's going to get traded. This is a win-win. And literally worst case scenario played out. I'm sitting there with 35% Dearness Johnson, like the John Travolta meme from Pulp Fiction, just like kind of looking around like, what are we doing, Cleveland? Can we move him, please? And so luckily I don't have to do that again this year, as he is clearly the third running back, and we won't be drafting Dearness Johnson unless an injury happens to ETN or Tank Bigsby. But yeah, it was a unfortunate circumstance. There's quite a few late round unfortunate circumstances last year. So to go to the opposite side of your point, being very particular about the guys you're drafting and the profile probably matters, because if you think about it, we shouldn't have been drafting OBJ last year. It was probably bad, right?
Right.
Will Fuller, we heard no news at all from him. And I understand the profile checks out, everything sounded great about him, but my man went dark. My man went real dark. My man is still real dark. Nobody knows where he is still. We're still looking for Will Fuller. And those are probably some of the traps we need to talk about avoiding, as well as the players that we want in the future. So I think player profiles really matter, situations matter, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about it as well.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just because it's a like kind of a passion of mine, mainly honestly in the running back area, but even in the wide receiver space. So I think about like Zay Jones last year, where a lot of the time, and this year in particular, it's going to be very difficult to find actual impact wide receivers, you know, in the 17th, 18th round of drafts, let's say on Underdog or really anywhere, just because of the market has gotten very sharp on, right? Any wide receiver. You get to the fourth, you get to the late third round, and you're like, oh my God, these are the wide receivers. Like the best wide receiver I can get in the late third round is Amari Cooper or Calvin Ridley, who hasn't played in 2 years. Like you can, of course, tell yourself a story on those guys, but the days of getting right Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in the 5th round, Cooper Kupp in the 4th, 5th round, like those days are long gone. So it's going to be more difficult to find those kinds of guys later, because that naturally means everyone with a pulse has gotten pulled up. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster hasn't been good in a long time, and he's going in the 10th round, right? Because that's just the wide receiver landscape. But the impact when you find Zay Jones in the last year, what he did in the 17th round or something similar, a late round pick wide receiver that is putting up 20 plus point weeks multiple times a season. And that's the thing, is the difference now is that what Zay Jones, you don't have to find the next Justin Jefferson, right? So Justin Jefferson in his rookie season was going in like kind of that late 16th round or something like that, because we weren't really sure about him. He was a slot receiver at LSU. Oh my gosh, what was the wide receiver that was air quotes starting over him heading into this? You know, he was a backup, right? He was and the next thing you know, Justin Jefferson is now currently this year the 101. That's probably not something you'll ever find again, but you can find impactful players late in the draft at all positions, and particularly at little less wide receiver, but running back, wide receiver, or running back, quarterback, and tight end that can be like tournament winning plays.
Yeah.
And I feel like we just write it off, right? Like, and we'll do this. I'll do this. You get late in the draft and you're just like, who plays with my stack, or right, who correlates with a week 17 game, or all that. And I'm not saying that that's wrong in a vacuum, but it's also important to know, like, who should you be a little heavier on in the late rounds, or who is maybe mispriced a little bit in the late rounds, right? Like Zay Jones, if you had Zay Jones, it doesn't matter if you stacked the Jaguars last year. If you drafted Zay Jones, you wanted him 2 years ago. It doesn't matter if you correlated Eli Mitchell 2 years ago or Cordero Patterson. That doesn't matter. If you hit on him, that's important. And so there's this balancing act where it's important to still figure out who we want to target in late rounds. And I'm excited to get into that. I got a couple of kind of spicy-ish takes, but I'm interested in some of the guys that popped off to you.
So just for me, like, just to go off that point you made, I think you're 100% correct in like the late rounds, like when we're talking 17th, 18th round, it's really not many wide receivers that jump off the board. To me, the quote unquote late round wide receivers are in that like 13th, 14th round that still might have some value. So I'll just start with the one name. This is going to shock pretty much everybody, but MVS has a current ADP of 155.9, right? And I just want to point him out because think of this wide receiver core, right? Listen to me, Eric. Just listen.
I
Think
know.
of this. Think of this wide receiver.
I'm not
core.
surprised. I'm not surprised, and I'm not even going to argue with you. But I would hope that we were going to get more than 10 minutes in before we got to MVS.
Well, I just want to get the 14th round out of the way, right? Because when you look at him, it's like him and Rashid Shaheed, right? That are in that area for the wide receivers you want. Because I'll take him over DPJ. Like I do like DPJ, but I mean, we're talking about a wide receiver that's going to be on the field the majority of the snaps in Kansas City. So come on, Andrew. Come back.
Shout out Andrew for excellent comments.
But I just think I think he is getting pushed down draft boards when all the other wide receivers are getting pushed up. And he's a guy that's going to pop off maybe 3 or 4 weeks this year, and you can get some value on him. So he's a guy that I'm going to be maybe not as overweight as I was last year on, but I'm still going to be overweight on him this year because we're trying to figure out Kadarius Toney. We're trying to figure out Rashee Rice. We're trying to figure out Sky Moore. And the one guy we know that is going to be on the field is MVS. He's just going to be on the outside pretty much every play, probably 70 to 90% of the 70 to 90% of the snaps. And I think he's just too undervalued, to be honest.
I do not have a problem with the MVS take. He was really not great last year. He wasn't what we hoped for if you drafted him at all. But still, like, this is what I think gets missed. And I'm really not even trying to like pump MVS. But if you just look at him, so what I will say is we do have the playoffs included here. So this nuclear week that you see here for MVS is that playoff game where he just went absolutely nuts. But even if we throw that out, right? And we include it because like it was a game that he played.
Right.
Like you can't like that's something that really frustrates me sometimes with fantasy analysis is like, why does the Gabe Davis 4-touchdown game, everyone uses it as like, we're going to laugh at him over that and throw it out. And why does MVS's best game, which came in the conference championship game, I believe?
Yeah, I believe so.
Why does that get thrown away when we're doing our fantasy analysis? It happened while he was on this team. Like, I just don't understand why we throw that out. So we're including that here. And so this is for some quick context, this is a nuclear week, meaning we calculate these by spike week as a 1 standard deviation above like kind of the usable week score from a wide receiver perspective in that given week. Nuclear week being 2 above that. So there's not a lot of nuclear weeks that even really happen. He had one. And he had 2 spike weeks, and then he had 11 usable weeks. There's a lot of duds, of course, that are mixed in there, and a lot of usable weeks, which is generally, 7 or 8 points, something like that, 6 to 8 points, something like that at wide receiver. But like that at pick 160 in this wide receiver landscape attached to Patrick Mahomes, I do think like I was, kind of scoffing at the MVS thing, but like I'm taking him. I'm taking him on teams where it makes sense, at pick 160 or whatever, because this is in the bag and we don't have to like it. Everyone agrees he's not very good. Like as a real life NFL player, there's flaws, right? Kadarius Toney, Richie James, Rashee Rice, all of that. We all get that. But like Odell Beckham goes at pick 108, right? Yeah. Like the wide receiver landscape, we can't just scoff at all of these guys. And he is on the Chiefs. He's going to play and he's going to run routes. And so I think he kind of fits, as a late round target for a wide receiver if you get to that range.
He's like the perfect like exclamation point on your wide receiver room. You need a 7th wide receiver. He's the perfect 7th wide receiver. You need an 8th. He's the perfect 8 because there's not many after him that you want. So we don't have to invest the capital we did last year. He's on our favorite offense, quote unquote, one of our favorite offenses in the league. Probably gets a ton of playing time. There was a lot of near misses with them last year between him and Mahomes that could, if you want to talk about, we always talk about touchdown regression, right? So if there's some positive regression on just a few of those, he gets his other 2 games. He gets 2 big games last year, and he's up 6 rounds right now.
Agreed.
Right? So if that playoff game happens in the regular season, he's probably up 3 rounds or something like that. So I just think that he has nuclear upside on one of the best offenses in the league, and we're getting him at a reduced cost when his position has been pushed up. So that's all I wanted to point out.
I really do hate the fact you brought up all the misses. Like from both, I was in on him for best ball and played him way more than any human ever should in DFS. And like the amount of times he was legit open down the field and Mahomes missed him. And like the whole bit, it triggered me even more because the whole bit was you can't draft, right, Tyreek or Waddle or Tua or whatever, because Tua can't throw the ball down the field. And those assholes were just catching slants and, knees and elbows running to the end zone constantly. And the guy I drafted in the 10th round is wide open down the field, and the best quarterback on the planet with a rocket launcher for an arm
can't hit him.
Can't hit him at all. Like, and I do think that's where we tie into right, wrong, or indifferent, the results of last year. And you're like, yeah, but like, what if MVS caught 2 of those? I'm not saying everyone. I'm not saying like, what if he caught two long touchdowns? Next thing you know, he's got 1,000 yards. He's got a bunch more touchdowns. And like, it's silly because it didn't happen. And you can't do that for every single player, right? You can't go down the list. There's way too many players to be like, oh, what if he caught this one? But like, it is at least from a thought experiment perspective to be like, are we discounting this guy a little too much? And I think in MVS's case specifically, we probably are. Should he go, where he went last year? No. No one's arguing that. But in the wide receiver, avalanche that we're dealing with right now, should he go 160 overall? Like, why is Michael Gallup going 125 and MVS is going 160? Like, objectively, what is the difference other than one?
Well, let me one up you on this.
Plays for the Chiefs.
Why is Rashee Rice and Sky Moore going in front of him?
At least
Sky Moore?
Why aren't they closer? Or at least why aren't they closer?
Why aren't they the Ravens? Why aren't they just bunched together?
If you want to bet on the young guys, I don't have a problem with that. I prefer to bet on the young guys, right? Scott, specifically Sky and Rashee Rice. But why are they going? I'm just 125. I think the last, it's somewhere around 125, and MVS is going almost 160. That is too wide of a gap, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. But we can.
I think they all should be going higher. Every Chiefs wide receiver. Tony is probably about right, but every Chiefs wide receiver beyond Tony is going too cheap because the upside is crazy. What if they're the guy? Is the whole thesis. The floor.
I guess their Week 17 matchup sucks, right? Nobody wants to play the Bengals on Week 17.
Who the hell wants to have Bengals Chiefs in Week 17? Idiots. The Bengals game got canceled last year. Why would you ever want to have another Bengals Week 17 game? But I think that people get too tied up in here's how I project this offense and like the target share and stuff. And like between Sky, Rice, and MVS, I don't give a shit. I don't know. Do you know? Does anyone know? Do the Chiefs know? The Chiefs don't know who's going to play between those guys. Right. So like, I just want all of them. And I think MVS is a price play. He's just a price play.
Just a price play. That's all he is this year for me.
All right. It's on the thumbnail and it has come up in the chat. So I'm just going to go ahead and spill the beans. One of mine is Russell Gage on the Tampa Bay Bucks. And a lot of my guys that are late round targets are kind of what I would, Russell Gage is not the perfect example of this, but post-hype sleepers is kind of how I would, that's a catchy phrase that people have used in fantasy for a long time. Russell Gage last year, when Godwin was injured and he signed to Tampa Bay, obviously Tom Brady was with the Bucks. Gage shot up to like, how high did he get? 7th round?
No, he went, I think he was going 6th round. I remember just like doing a triple take. Like, what are you idiots doing?
Gage.
Who is drafting Russell Gage in the 6th round, you psychopaths? Russell Gage?
By the way,
round?
that's an average draft. The A in ADP means average. That means there's some goddamn idiots drafting him, in the 5th round or whatever. But I did think we love to dunk on that, and it got out of control. But I think his rise made sense in the realm that you have Mike Evans on one side, and now last year the problem for Russell Gage was Chris Godwin is historically a slot receiver, as is Russell Gage, and then they did of course pick up Julio Jones, but Russell Gage is like a pretty good NFL wide receiver, better than average. I don't want to go so far as to say like above average, but he's more than just a journeyman wide receiver.
Is he alive? Because the way I remember, he got folded like an accordion like 3 times in his last 2 games, and I thought he was dead.
He is alive so much that their new offensive coordinator is like touting Russell Gage, like very excited for Russell Gage, so much that they're talking about how Chris Godwin is going to play more on the outside of this offense, which is like both good and bad for Chris Godwin. I don't think I would want to play outside in a Baker Mayfield offense, but honestly, I wouldn't want to play.
He can't even get it to the numbers. Never mind 15 yards down the field.
Can he throw it? Like, who knows? Baker Mayfield is, what's the actor that does the Make It Rain in the Ben Affleck movie or whatever. Anyway,
he is the epitome of 2 yards in a cloud of dust, and he's a quarterback. He throws the ball 2 yards and hits the ground, and the dust flies up. Like that's who Baker Mayfield is.
So like I don't think you really are excited for any Bucks wide receiver, quite frankly. But I think the writing on the wall, as Vadim said in the chat, and as I totally agree with, is that Godwin is going to play more on the outside, right? Julio's gone. They don't really have anybody else. Tyler Johnson's gone. Scotty Miller's gone, etc. Evans is obviously strictly an outside wide receiver. Russell Gage is still there. I think Russell Gage is going to be the slot receiver for the Bucks, and it's like a pretty good wide receiver. He did this for the Falcons and was a fantasy viable wide receiver. Plays the Saints in week 17, so I'm not trying to use that as the only reason why you should draft him. But like you get to round 18, and you're looking for wide receivers. You drafted Chris Olave, or you drafted someone from the Saints, Alvin Kamara. Why is Russell Gage playing slot for the Bucks every snap? A proven good NFL wide receiver, was catapulted up to the 8th, 6th round last year. There were people drafting him in the 6th round last year. Now he's undrafted, literally undrafted in drafts. I feel like sometimes we take those guys who were a joke last year, and he was. The ADP rise was a joke. And then we take it too far, right? The same thing with MVS. MVS got pulled up to the 7th, 8th round last year in the wide receiver craze and the Chiefs wide receiver craze. And now we're like, no interest at all. And I feel that's what we've done with some of these guys. And I think and then we pull up Michael Gallup. Like, why is Michael Gallup not getting that treatment? What has he done? Right? What has he done that has earned? And right, what has Juju earned? Why has Juju earned a continued top 110 ADP? But these guys don't get drafted. I just think that Russell Gage, right? Just if I need an 18th round wide receiver, he's good at the game. He, like, relatively speaking, compared to compared to Braxton Berrios or whatever, he's good at the game, and like he's gonna play. And what are you looking for in the 18th round from a wide receiver? Run routes, be decent. That's about it. And you can get that with him and MVS a little bit earlier. So there's a lot of wide receivers I think are undervalued back there.
So I think one of the things I have 2 questions for you about the Russell Gage thing, but one of the points you bring up is 18th round Russell Gage, which I think is pretty important because I don't want to speak for everybody, but I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on what people are doing in the 18th round. And I would say the chat can tell me if they disagree, but the 18th round is pretty much every position but wide receiver. So this is like one of those easy zag points. So if you do find a wide receiver like Russell Gage you like in the 18th round, this is a great way to be a little bit different on some of your builds than everyone else is doing. Because when people do 3 tight ends, myself included, generally that 18th round pick is a tight end. I'm usually grabbing somebody in that 18th round, right? So something like this might get me to grab a Freiermuth or a, insert guy that's in that, an Njoku that's in that range that I normally wouldn't grab, because now I know that 18th round I'm going to be targeting like Russell Gage or something like that. But my question to you would be, do we think that Evans or Godwin are still viable to get traded this year? And the other point I would add is the reason why he might be good is because the Bucks are probably going to be playing from behind the majority of this year. I would say they're going to have to throw it, which is kind of why I like Rashad White a little bit more than the field probably. And I don't have enough of him for sure. But do you think there's any viable reasoning for either of those two guys to get traded? Because I don't think they're going to get moved.
I think if I were a betting man, I would not expect them to get moved. But I think that's like, if you have a guy who goes undrafted and is going to play regardless, and now that's me saying it's better than 50-50, right? My whole statement is not that I guarantee they're not going to get moved. I think it's a very real possibility that they could, like if the Bucks start out 0-4 or something like that.
Yeah, midseason.
What is the point of keeping Godwin and Evans? I think Evans a little more likely to get moved, but I'm just speculating. That's
the Bills think they need another guy, like they really like in the middle of the season, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm pretty sure DeAndre Hopkins is going to get moved before the season. So I don't know if you saw his interview today.
No, I did not.
Oh man, he laid out what he wants in the franchise he gets traded to, and there was a key point in it that has made me not draft. I know this isn't on topic for the show, but he laid out that he wants a stable GM. He wants to go to a team with a good defensive line. Like, he's laying out literally the groundwork of the team he wants to go to. And he also said, I want a quarterback that has passion for the game. And then he brought up Kyler Murray. He's like, I think Kyler does have passion for the game, but he's hurt. And when DeAndre Hopkins is saying, but he's hurt, like every alarm bell went off in my head, like ding, 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 ding. Like, if he's saying DeAndre Hopkins is hurt confidently in an interview, Kyler Murray, I'm not drafting Kyler Murray at all now. Like, I was already like not drafting him, and I was like, this is either the best or the worst decision.
Right.
I'm out on Kyler for this year after that interview.
Makes it feel more like a redshirt year, right? They know they're not dumb. They know. I don't want to say they're not dumb. The Cardinals have been quite dumb for a couple of years, but think about how valuable the number 1 pick in a Caleb Williams, Drake May draft is, and they obviously know that Kyler is their future. They're not getting it for Caleb Williams, but they would get it for the value of the absolute ransom you can get for the number 1 pick in next year's draft. And so, I think it makes. I haven't drafted Kyler yet. I sprinkle in some Cardinals because I'm not going to be stubborn to that take. And even if Kyler doesn't play, that doesn't mean that Hollywood or James Conner or Keontae Ingram or Trey McBride can't be useful for fantasy.
James Conner is not going to be useful.
But yeah, correct. If James Conner is useful for fantasy with whoever I don't even know who's going to be the quarterback. I
quit.
In the stream, I'm never doing fantasy football content ever again. But I will not be stubborn around the Cardinals in general, but I think that that's what it's funny because somebody mentioned there's a couple of Cardinals mentions. I will say I do like Trey McBride. I do really like Trey McBride because if we're gonna play this game, this Cardinals game, it's gonna be bad, right? Even if Kyler could come back, what is the point of bringing Kyler back when they're 1-9 or whatever?
Right.
So the same thing exists for Zach Ertz. and they drafted Trey McBride in the second round. Let's envision this crazy scenario where you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins gets moved. James Conner, why is James Conner playing in week 15 of this, 1-13 season that they have? Kyler Murray's not playing. DeAndre Hopkins is gone. Zach Ertz, no reason to play Zach Ertz. It's like the next thing you know, Trey McBride's like projects for one of the highest target shares of any tight end in the league. Now, it's a gross offense, and so you're not like excited about how many points they're going to score. But like at tight end, that is like only a third of the battle. Dawson Knox has been playing tight end for a team that scores 40 points every single week, and he doesn't do shit because he doesn't demand targets. If you demand targets at tight end, right? Isaiah Likely last year in week, whatever it was, I think it was week 18. Trey McBride actually in week 17 of last year. No Kyler, right? No Nuke. They're just no Connor, disaster offense, horrible. I don't remember if Connor was playing or whatever, but a horrible offense. 100 yard, like 8 catches, like 85 yards and a touchdown or something. Wouldn't you take that in the 20th round? Goddamn, I know that I would. So I do really like Trey McBride actually, but he's the bet against Ertz, Kyler, Nuke, right? Hollywood, all those guys.
I just looked up my Trey McBride exposure because I knew I had quite a bit of him. He is my highest owned tight end right now.
That's amazing.
And do you want to guess my percentage on him?
Oh,
do you want to play that game?
I do, only because having done enough shows last year, I saw what your highest exposure was, and it's a lot. So, first, what site, like just BBM or all across Underdog?
I checked all across Underdog real quick just to see, which is probably 40 to 50 teams right now.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. 45%.
Wow, you almost nailed it. It's 47% right now.
Jesus
I didn't even know that till I looked at it. It shows you that I need to be checking my stuff.
This is what happened last year. We show up on shows, and I'm like, I thought I liked this guy. And Rob's like, oh yeah, I have 65% MVS. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I really like MVS, and I have like 25, and I felt like that was a big stand. That's how I feel about Trey McBride. But he makes a lot of sense, right? Like 2 years ago, his like metrics as a prospect coming into the NFL were like he like mirrored Kyle Pitts from like a receiving. I know it's Colorado State versus the SEC, but like, and he's not the athlete, but like he was really good. He's like really good in college. And then when he got the opportunity, it wasn't great at first last year after Ertz got down, but then he popped and he's playing every snap. Like, I don't know, what more can you ask for? I feel like from a late round tight end, he feels like maybe the best one out of all the late round tight ends to me.
And as a guy that like throws away offenses, that basically is like, I'm not drafting this offense. I think the star you can put on that is the tight end position because it's just a bad position, right? And theoretically, so I'm coming around a little bit more on a guy like Dalton Schultz. I mean, he's not a guy we're going to talk about, but just in terms of it's a bad offense, but he's got a rookie quarterback who's going to probably throw a ton of passes to him. We don't really care about the touchdown upside in the sense that he needs to score a lot that year. He just needs to score a lot in the playoffs or a couple in the playoffs to get there. And so the position as a whole, that bad offense thing doesn't bother me as long as he is catching passes, because 3 points for a tight end is, could get in your lineup, believe it or not, versus a wide receiver. 3 points at wide receiver like kills you. 3 points at tight end, you're like, well, that sucks, but whatever. It got in the lineup and I had 20 points from everyone else, so we're fine here. It's just let's just put an asterisk on like these bad offenses. And I do like Trey McBride. He has a great week 17 game. Has nothing to do with why I'm drafting him, though. The reason I have so much Trey McBride is because I'm doing three tight end sets or 3 tight end builds frequently, like at a high clip. And he's usually my 17th or 18th round pick because I think he's underpriced. And I think that goes perfectly to the show. I think he should probably be, a few rounds higher than he is, but he's just pushed down along all those other guys, and I'm just going to smash him for now.
Yep, I totally agree. I am going to pivot now, though, in terms of underpriced. a player who has now risen. I just want to give him an honorable mention because he's no longer like undrafted. He is still a late round pick, but he's not undrafted. Shout out to the Browns for ruining our fun that we've been having. Jerome Ford, who the Browns came out and basically said was Nick Chubb's backup. Now that could change. They could bring Hunt back, or they could bring one of these veterans in. But the Browns recently came out and gave Jerome Ford the vote of confidence as the backup to Nick Chubb. And subsequently, we've seen his ADP rise up into the top 200 of underdog drafts when we used to regularly be able to get him in the 18th round or he was undrafted. He was a free pick at the end of drafts. So I just want to give a shout out to Jerome Ford, and I want to give a shout out to us here at Spike Week because we've been touting Jerome Ford for, oh my God, the Super Bowl hadn't happened yet, and I think we were touting Jerome Ford as the backup to Nick Chubb. He is my second highest owned running back in the big board behind Pierre Strong. I don't know how I feel about that one, but Jerome Ford I'm feeling pretty good about. And I will say from a late round perspective, like I want to dive into some of these guys that are really kind of a little more obscure moving forward. But Jerome Ford, 17th, 18th round is an awesome pick still, in my opinion. I don't care about the risk that Kareem Hunt or the veterans provide, because at the end of the day, every 18th round pick has risk. There are no certainties back here in the draft. Even the Russell Gages and these of the world, there is no certain pick back then. But if you can get the backup to Nick Chubb at this point in the draft, it's a smash. It's just an absolute smash. And so, and we're seeing that the market is realizing that it was a smash. That's why he's going, 195 now as opposed to 220 as he did before. But a guy who is similar to me, who I'm trying to get out. I'm still drafting Jerome Ford. I have a brand to uphold, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But a guy who I'm kind of pivoting to in terms of the 18th round is a situation where similar to Nick Chubb in that people won't draft backup running backs to like top 3 round picks when they don't know specifically who it is. Right? It's like we'll draft a backup to, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of somebody off the top of my head. We will draft so last year we would draft the both of the Cardinals guys. This year we'll draft both of the Bills guys in the 9th round, right? We'll draft James Cook at 95 and we'll draft Damian Harris at 118. We'll draft last year, we'll draft James Conner and Chase Edmonds. We'll draft, right? We'll draft all these Dolphins guys, 3 Dolphins guys. 3 Bears guys get drafted. All these running backs get drafted. But the potential handcuff to a first or a second round pick will go undrafted. And one of them this year is with the Giants. Saquon Barkley is maybe the only remaining workhorse that exists in all of fantasy football. I love Christian McCaffrey. I love Austin Eckler. I love all these guys. Who doesn't love Tony Pollard, Ramondre, Jacobs, etc.? Saquon Barkley is the only guy who basically plays every snap unless he needs a sip of water. Unless he even Christian McCaffrey comes out of the game for Eli Mitchell, right? Obviously, Austin Eckler does. Saquon is the workhorse in a Brian Daboll offense, and no one drafts any other Giants running back because they don't know who it is. And they drafted a running back this year in the 5th round. Eric Gray out of Oklahoma. Matt Breida and Gary Brightwell last year proved to not be a thing. And now Brian Daboll finally drafted a guy, and he's a pretty talented back out of Oklahoma. Not a superstar athlete or whatever, but this team, this coaching staff and front office finally drafted a guy, and we can get him for free. Totally 18th round, never, ever, ever drafted. And so if Saquon goes down, you don't think you want the Giants running back? Like I do. I sure as hell do. And I'm more than happy, again, similar to the conversation before about these guys like Jerome Ford or whatever. If I'm wrong, so be it. Like, it's fine. Like, you're going to miss on your 18th round picks all the time. But the upside of like nailing Saquon Barkley's direct handcuff when he's not being drafted, that's just like a smash to me. So Eric Gray is kind of the new Jerome Ford for me.
He actually got sniped for me in the 20th round in a draft on DK the other day, and I was like, "Is Eric in this draft with me? Like, what is going on right now?" I was like looking for him. I'm like, really? Like, I lost out on Eric Gray, and I'm upset. But yeah, I agree with you on the Eric Gray thing. And the other thing with Saquon is they made him a contract offer that they had to pull.
Great point.
They pulled it from him, and like he has to play on the franchise tag this year, which he, as of last I know, has not signed that franchise tag yet.
He is not.
So there is I still think he plays. I think we learned our lesson with Le'Veon Bell sitting out a year as a running back about what happens to these guys if they sit out that full year. Like, you're not valuable anymore, to be blunt. So I don't think he doesn't play, but Saquon's a second round pick. Like you said, there's no one backing him up in terms of like who we're taking in these drafts. They drafted him because I think they know he's gone next year. Like, I don't think Saquon's going to be a Giant next year at all.
Why does if they wanted to keep him for years, they would have already
found a way.
They gave him the franchise because they're planning for they want him this year, as they should, and they have the money, and they can't tangibly spend that money this year to where it makes sense, and they want to win. So that's fine. But like, they don't want Saquon for 4 more years. And so they're getting ready for the future, like you said.
Yeah. So there might be a point, 10th week, week 10, week 11. Saquon hamstring hurts a little bit. He doesn't want to play on it, right? Because he doesn't want to get hurt for his contract next year. The Giants are like, well, it's time to see what we have in Eric Gray. And he just kind of takes the role and does what he does with it. And you get like 3 to 4 solid weeks out of him. What I'll say on this point, it's getting brought up in the chat a lot. Like, I'm the same way on this with Zamir White. I've been grabbing Zamir White late. The other guy that I've been doing this with is, at the moment, I think Malik Davis is the clear backup in Dallas. I don't understand.
100%.
I don't understand why people are doing this fucking Rojo thing, and they're doing
Deuce Vaughn and Rojo. Deuce Vaughn and Rojo is like this. It's a meme all come together. It's a Spider-Man meme, except one's really, really little and the other one's normal size. It's like they're pointing at each other like Rojo's not a thing, Deuce is not a thing, but everybody's drafting those two. And then off in the corner is Malik Davis, who's actually like a legit decent.
He can
play.
He's
like 70% Tony Pollard. And no one drafts him, and we're drafting Deuce because his dad works for the Cowboys. Like, and because I love Kareem. Obviously, Kareem. We do a show here on Spike Week. Pat Kareem is the man, but like, because Pat Kareem said Rojo was good, and because the Cowboys have Deuce Vaughn's dad on staff, we're gonna take the 3rd and 4th best running backs on the roster over the 2nd best running back on the roster.
I don't get it.
I can't figure it out, dude.
Yeah, it blows my mind. The one thing that I'll just add with Eric Gray, and I think we're on different sides of the coins on this, and it's perfectly fine. For me, I don't mind taking Eric Gray in the 18th round if I do take Saquon in the 2nd. I'm just, those are the handcuffs that I'm pretty fine with, where like, if I get a guy 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, and his backup is either getting undrafted or going in the 18th round, I still think you have enough leverage in case Saquon goes down or something like that. Eric Gray takes over. You're still getting a guy that was undrafted. You're locking up the Giants backfield for nothing, for literally nothing. He's still an 18th round pick. So these are the things that, like, when we talk about quote unquote handcuffing a position, specifically just the running back position, I'm fine with taking backups. Like, I'm not taking Josh Jacobs, but if I were, I would still be fine with taking Zamir White in the 18th round. So there's only a few guys like that. It's a little tougher with guys like CMC and Elijah Mitchell. But if these guys aren't getting drafted, you're already providing leverage for yourself based on just the ownership percentage overall. So who cares if he's a handcuff, in my opinion?
And that's the big thing to me is I'm actually kind of happy you brought this up, because I need to think about it some more. Add it to the list of absurdly disgusting padded cell mental illness things that I need to think about from a best ball perspective. But the handcuffing a running back when his handcuff is not being drafted is a different thing than drafting drafting CMC and drafting Eli Mitchell is very, very different than drafting Saquon and Eric Gray.
Mm-hmm.
because, like you said, Eric Gray does not get drafted. I put this up on the screen because I wanted to make it very, very apparent to everyone else. Clearly, we're showing a draft rate of 0% for Eric Gray in Best Ball Mania. Yeah, it's obviously not 0, but the point is, in basically every draft you do, Eric Gray's not going to be selected. So we're talking minuscule ownership percentage at this point in time for him. And so in that circumstance, you can't just say, and people will do this, I will do this, we'll all fall into this trap of saying you can't handcuff your running back, or you can handcuff your running back. Every situation is different, right? Handcuffing CMC with Eli Mitchell is wildly different to handcuffing Saquon with Eric Gray. And I still I'm not going to even like make a case as of right now, because I haven't thought about it enough with the Eric Gray thing, but it's different. I'll tell you, it is definitely very different than handcuffing a guy who even like handcuffing Aaron Jones with AJ Dillon. Even though Aaron Jones is cheaper, like punting your 5th round pick to help your 9th round pick is different than a guy who literally never ever gets drafted in Eric Gray. So just something to think about. I will hit NorCal Cop Watch. That's interesting. Do you have a scanner?
North California Cop Watch?
Are the cops sketchy in Northern California that you you got to patrol them and keep on them? But this is an interesting question. You mentioned like some of the concerns about Saquon. I know we're talking about late round draft picks, but what are you doing with Saquon kind of with what we talked about?
I'm limiting my exposure to him, and it's not like a worrisome thing at the moment with him. I guess it's adding in a little, but I just like a lot of the guys around him in the second round a little bit more. So I will have Saquon. I will draft Saquon. It's just not going to be at a high rate. But that also that's a whole different conversation. That's because the value of the wide receivers around him is head and shoulders like more important. And the other problem is I like Pollard and I like Chubb better than I like Barkley, right? Like I like Barkley. I like Saquon Barkley. I just prefer at the moment Tony Pollard, and I prefer Nick Chubb to Saquon. It's just, it is what it is. It's razor thin. Like it's not like a huge like gap between them, but if I were to do rankings, that he would be underneath those two guys probably.
Yep.
Right. So why? I mean, it's the CD Lamb thing though. It's like, well, you're never going to get him cheaper, and Saquon may fall, but CD is just the same thing every year, where CD's too high for me, but I know that if I want CD Lamb, I have to grab him where he is. So
and would you feel this is what Saquon is for me? I don't like. I actually went to we had and if you're not in our Discord, hop in the Discord. There's a link in the description because you'll get these kind of enthralling conversations. But like I'm not sure I've drafted Saquon yet, but I'm the type of person that like wants to discuss the ins and outs of like all these picks and why or why not we should draft him. And there was people just being like, Saquon is way too expensive, blah, blah, blah. And I just like played devil's advocate and was kind of like what we talked about here. I'm like, I don't know. The Giants were pretty good last year. They're probably only going to be better. They brought in a bunch more talent. Brian Daboll seems good. Daniel Jones got better. They didn't bring it like, we just talked about Eric Gray. If Eric Gray is the backfield competition, he's probably in a pretty good yeah, this is true. He's probably in a pretty good situation, right? From a workhorse running back perspective. We could do like crazy parallels. We could do like Josh Jacobs was on, 1 year, prove it deal last year. Basically, it was like they didn't re-up Josh Jacobs' 5th year option, so they just worked him into the ground. We could just do all of that with Saquon, and he's like an elite, explosive fantasy running back, still reasonably young. But I'm like, but to your point, I just kind of like all the other guys better, and I can't. But like that shouldn't be the reason why I have 0 Saquon. It could be the reason why I have more of the other guys. But if you can't come up with the reason as to why, like you get to week 17, Saquon plays the Rams. I don't know if you've seen the Rams plans for their roster over the season. Defense is not defense is optional. They just said, Aaron Donald, we're going to keep you, and we're going to put a bunch of XFL players around you, and pray to God you can stop enough people to help to let Stafford.
Can you get 15 sacks a game, Aaron? Can you do that for us?
He's gonna have to have 40 sacks this year for the Rams to not be 3-14 or whatever. And so like you get to week 17 and you got Saquon against one of the worst defenses in the league. Would you not like that? And I would. And so it's just like we have to weigh all these things. You know what I mean? It's not just like, do you like Pollard better? Because I do too. Do you like wide receivers better? Because I like the wide receivers better. It's a lot. And Saquon's a very difficult evaluation, I feel like. But all the more reason to draft Eric Gray. If you're sketched out on Saquon, take the 0% drafted 18th round version and be like, what if the Giants don't play well this year? Last year they made the playoffs. What if they're out of the playoffs? By that point, like that's Eric Gray season, right? And you can get him in the last round. Who's up next? Who's up next for you after you go ahead?
Real quick, because I just think based on the chat, we're gonna have to do a handcuffing show. Like or at least put it as part of a show, because people are asking a lot of questions about handcuffing. So that might be a can of worms that we actually have to.
Let's just do it next week. Let's do it next week.
Sure, we'll do it next week. I've been taking Zach Evans in the 18th round a decent amount here, just to try.
What's your thoughts on Zach Evans versus Kyren? Do you have any special take?
I don't. It's literally pick a guy and hope it's the right situation for the Rams. I don't want to try to sit here and bullshit everybody with expert analysis, because I just think nobody knows, right? So
no one knows. Sean McVay doesn't know.
So right now it's pick a guy, hope I'm right, and then when preseason comes, if I have to freaking pivot, I have to freaking pivot. But it goes to the Giants Rams point. I like that game a lot, and the way to get it relatively cheap is to grab the backup running back. We like Cam Akers this year. What the hell do we know about getting what we're going to get with Cam Akers? We don't know.
Right? I love Cam Akers, but like it's because he's going to get the ball. If Zach Evans or Kyren Williams are getting the ball, then like that's better. That's even better.
And the anomaly could have been him playing well last year. That could have been the anomaly. He could still suck. Like there could have just been a hot streak with that Rams offense. I mean, we're not up on Baker Mayfield. He looked okay in some of those Rams games, and we still think he sucks. So I do draft Cam Akers here and there. I'm not like downplaying Cam. It's just we don't know. There's potential that one of these guys takes over the backfield without injury, right? Like I would say that that's a possibility.
It's probably low, but it's not 0%. It's definitely not. Cam Akers left the team last year.
Yeah.
Like it got in the doghouse and like had that, no one knows really exactly what happened, and we all assume that it's fine. And Cam Akers is a huge target for me at his current ADP, but like that doesn't mean that like this is all just roses, right? Like as Andrew mentioned, this is a reason. So you want to talk about the horrible downside to a tout life is so first of all, it also helps that Kyren Williams is from St. Louis. I am admittedly biased for anyone that is from St. Louis. My brother-in-law is a diehard Notre Dame fan. Kyren went to Notre Dame. Kyren balled the hell out at Notre Dame. He was legit awesome at Notre Dame. And he was awesome in a way, as Andrew mentioned, that is like it's fantasy gold, right? So like Dwayne McBride, some people liked in the fantasy circles because like he was really productive in college, but like he never caught a pass. He never pass protected. He was just a runner. And like, dude, I hate to break it to you, but like there's a million dudes who can take a handoff and run well. And that's why running backs are so replaceable. The reason why some of these guys last is because of things that Kyren did. And so I fell into this. I was loosey with the football with Kyren. He was my highest owned running back. And we talked about the big board stuff. I was like all in like 12th round Kyren or whatever before he fell to whatever 6th round with the Rams and ran a 4.74. Like I think I might be able to go run a 4.740 right now still outside if I tried.
I can't anymore. I definitely can't anymore.
I don't know if I could get 4.7. I am getting old now, but like I could get reasonably close. But that's a bad sign for a 21-year-old, NFL draft prospect. And but the point is if that doesn't matter, is if he's slow, but that's okay, right? Like Leonard Fournette's slow now, right? We're talking about Zeke and they're slow, right? Najee's slow, and so if he does the little things, if he pass protects and he can catch passes and he can run routes, I lean more towards Kyren. Even Zach Evans is like a really good runner. Like he was the number 1 running back in his class because he's a legit good runner. But like the problem is there's a lot of good runners and there's not a lot of good pass protectors and guys who understand, scheme and all that kind of stuff. And so I lean a little bit more towards Kyren. But the point is that
either, right?
What either or, and when we're thinking about these guys, like there's pros and cons to everything. Like if Zach Evans is just electric, Zach Evans is probably a better runner than Cam Akers. Like, and that's not even a crazy thing to say. He was a 6th round pick. He's a better runner than Cam Akers was in college. But like, so like what does all this stuff mean? I don't know. And to your point, if Zach Evans just like the next thing Zach Evans took the first carry in week 1, would I be surprised? Like probably not. Like probably not, So all this is in flux, and that's why these guys are so valuable in best ball.
Right. It's not. I won't say it's a completely ambiguous backfield, but there is some ambiguity to it. So why would I not be taking? I mean, and you don't even have to. Like I'm taking Zach Evans, but who says you can't take both? Who says you can't fill out some rosters with either at this moment? Why we're drafting early is to try to hit on some of these guys late, knowing that we're burning some roster spots on other teams. So you can take a couple shots on Evans. You can take a couple shots on Kyren. Who cares? Like to sit here and try to like determine who it's going to be, May 22nd is a little silly. Like,
but
so
we're trying to figure out who can win you everything if it
right.
The point isn't, this is what gets missed. The point isn't, this show isn't to be like, we know who's going to be the backup running back everywhere. We know who's going to be the right Russell Gage. We know who's going to be the slot receiver everywhere. The point is to target the guys who, if they do get that right, if Eric Gray gets that role in with the Giants, the payoff is massive, right? If you can do your own assessment, Zach Evans versus Kyren, or even Billy Joe's like, hey, Ronnie Rivers is still around. You want to draft Ronnie Rivers? By all means, go for it. The point is to find the situations where, like, if that hits, right? Jerome Ford, you're seeing the market has realized with Jerome Ford that the juice is worth the squeeze now. We've been telling you the juice is worth the squeeze for a long time. Now the market's figuring that out. We're trying to find the next guys. And that's whether it's Zach Evans or Kyren Williams or Eric Gray or whatever. That's the point of this whole game, is to constantly finding the guys that so last year, here's an example. I screwed this up with the Bengals. I was a Chris Evans guy at this time last year. I said, P. Ryan's really not the guy. Evans, another year, a young guy, right? He's going to step into this backup role behind Mixon. And so I was drafting Chris Evans now. But the point was, I targeted a situation where if I was right, the payoff was monstrous. I picked the wrong guy. And actually, I eventually then pivoted once we got more information to Samaje Perine. And I ended up with like 7 or 8% Samaje Perine because I just kept clicking them later in the summer. But the reason why I eventually got to him is because I figured out, like this Giants thing, this is an advantageous situation, and I want this situation. I don't really care if I'm wrong about the player. We can always adjust and figure that out. But I know that this can win me best ball tournaments if I attack this one.
It's the perfect analogy, right? It's everyone wants Mixon, no one wants the backup, and It's just going to play out year after year after year, and it's going to be, it's just going to be what you do to win these tournaments or to give yourself a little bit of an edge. And, when you do hit on them, your advance rate's going to go through the moon, and you might even win a week because of one of these guys in the playoffs. So I agree.
All right, I'm going to toss one more guy out there, and then I'm going to toss it back over to you. And I'm going to go to tight end. And this is the Samaje P. Ryan of tight ends, actually. You mentioned the old guy that nobody wants to draft. It's tired. He sucked last year, just like P. Ryan did 2 years ago. We're excited about them. We're excited. Is he still free?
He's getting drafted. Yeah, he's free. He's getting drafted.
No, I meant free, like he's not in prison.
Oh, I think he's still having a standoff with the police, actually.
Yeah. That guy, I mean, when he puts out a tweet or something in it, like I pride myself in being able to kind of, read context clues and stuff like that. I'll be honest with you, I never understand what Antonio Brown is saying.
Yeah, he writes in Comic Sans.
The perfect segue from Antonio Brown is to Hunter Henry. If they're very similar type players. Patriots, white boy, very straight-laced from Arkansas or wherever the hell he's from. But I do think he feels like the tight end version of, you mentioned Samaje P. Ryan, where it was like, we know what his value is. And we're just sick of it. Like a small down season last year. But like Ramondre gets boosted up. And I understand. I love Ramondre. Who the heck doesn't like Ramondre Stevenson? He's like an awesome archetype for a fantasy back. He was great last year. But we've totally cratered the entire Patriots offense. And yet in 2021, now I'm not looking at 2022. In 2021, but before they brought in Tweedledee and Tweedledum to run the offense, Hunter Henry was the tight end 9 overall. Total points, tight end 9 in fantasy football. People were drafting that year, if you remember. Jonnu went before Hunter. People just don't like Hunter Henry, even though he's like a really good football player. And these are the situations I really love, especially late, where like I know he's good at the game and I know he can produce for fantasy. Is Hunter Henry going to be the tight end 2 this year? No, he's not. Shocker. But like I can build Mac Jones, Hunter Henry stacks. If I'm doing what you're talking about, like I'm doing a bunch of late round tight end stuff, I always have Hunter Henry in my bag. Mm-hmm. We have him drafted, 1%. He doesn't get drafted ever. Why doesn't Hunter Henry get drafted? Why are all these other guys getting drafted? The guy who I know he had a down year last year. They brought in Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki is competition to Juju. Mike Gesicki is not competition to Hunter Henry. He is a wide receiver. And so I just can't really wrap my head around why Hunter Henry is going undrafted.
Well, it's because of the Mike Gesicki thing. And because the reports came out that, when Gesicki got to town, he stayed at Mac Jones' house. That means they're best friends. He's going to throw 100% of his passes to him. I want to compare a situation for you, and maybe this will get you angry, and I don't mean to. But you're saying that Gesicki isn't competition for Hunter Henry, which I concur, right? Because he's essentially a slot. Doesn't this all and he's not going undrafted. He's still getting drafted in like the 14th, 15th round.
Bills.
But isn't this the same thing for Dawson Knox? Yeah. Like now I'm comfortable drafting Dawson Knox where he's going because I think he's just going to be the same thing he's been. Nothing's going to change with him. So he has potential upside here and there. He's a tight end that plays for the Bills. He sucks, but he's going to be on the field. Right? Like, so why aren't we drafting? I mean, everyone's going and drafting Dalton Kincaid. Why are we not drafting Dawson Knox in the 14th, 15th round? Right? Like, so it just feels easy.
I think the only counter is that we basically know Gesicki is this, and we cannot totally confirm what Kincaid is, right? Because we haven't seen it yet. And so I'm not saying that's right. I think Kincaid is very overpriced, to be clear. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just that. It's just like Kincaid has outs to being the full-time guy, to being this hybrid, but also being stealing work from Knox. Whereas and I could be wrong about this too, but I don't think Gesicki has outs to taking the inline tight end work from Hunter Henry. Like I don't see it.
So you think that they could still line Kincaid up inside is what
I think so.
Whereas they're never going to line up Gesicki.
I think the point of the like him playing the slot stuff is like this is what we know he can do right away. Mm-hmm. Because of course, who the fuck can't go run some goddamn routes right away? Like that's easy. The point is that we don't know 100% that he can play in line in our scheme with all pass blocking and run blocking, schemes right away. And that's okay. But I think that there's outs to him being in it more, his ceiling is Travis Kelce, not like from a fantasy production perspective, but like Kelsey's only a 75 to 80% snap player. He doesn't play every snap, right? Sometimes they bring in other tight ends to block. And that's the total ceiling for Kincaid. Whereas Gesicki doesn't have that in his bag. You know what I mean? Like he's never going to do that. That's my thought process.
I think I just let big best ball get to me and tell me that Dalton Kincaid is specifically playing in the slot. And
I'll plead the fifth.
So yeah, that's what I think. But I don't mind mixing Knox.
I lied. I'm not going to plead the fifth. Did you know that I think it was Kareem sent me that the highest snap rate of any team with two tight ends on the field last year was not even 30%. The highest of all 32 teams, it was not even 30%. The highest snap rate with two tight end personnel. And now let's take into consideration the Bills, the pass heaviest team in the NFL, one of the most forward thinking teams in the NFL. Do you think that they're going to play more tight ends than the average team? And the Chiefs are one of the highest, actually. They play a lot of two tight end sets with
Shout
Travis
out
Kelce.
to Noah Gray.
Yeah, exactly. Noah Gray gets out there. Jody Fortson. Why do you think those guys are like showdown gods?
Yeah.
Why is Jody Fortson on the winning showdown team like 3 times a year? Because the Chiefs play a bunch of two. But even then, it's like 25% of snaps. That's not good. Like Kincaid can't get there only because the Bills play two tight. He has to take Knox's role or like some form of Knox's role.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I'm not like going out of my way to draft Knox, but where he's going now, I've been like, he can be part of my 3 tight end teams now. And I'm not completely against it, but I'm not going overweight on Knox, especially because there are players that I like a little more in that range than him. But I think he can mix them in here and there.
I think so too. Now he's going like 180 now. He used to go, really, really high. I think he's
way. Yeah, it was stupid before. There wasn't even a reason to draft him where he was going.
So. Yeah, like they drafted Kincaid and Dawson Knox is going like 125 overall. It was like absurd.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think that kind of hits most of my guys. I mean, there are plenty. We brought up Noah Gray. He's a guy I mix in the 18th round that doesn't get drafted a lot. That I think has some upside, but also has contingent value. I think he mixes into both. So if you're doing 3 tight end sets and Mahomes is your quarterback and you don't have Travis Kelce, guys like Noah Gray are like perfect for that. And I don't even think you need him. Isaiah Likely, like you're pulling up.
Same idea.
Reminded
me. Yep.
It's he's another one that I grab a lot because, again, I don't think Mark Andrews has to go down for Isaiah Likely to be viable. Personally, it helps. No one's saying that it doesn't help, but I think he's going to find his way on the field at a decent clip this year.
And we talk about contingent value mostly at running back, as we should, because it's the best contingent value. But like tight end is in certain situations, like Noah Gray, as you mentioned, or Isaiah Likely, or Trey McBride. It's like huge. Like the impacts can be huge. Like Trey McBride had the best target share in week 17 of any tight end in the NFL last year. And it was because Zach Ertz wasn't there. Right. And Isaiah Likely was shout out to us who played him in DFS in week 18 last year, like had 10 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown or something like that. When
Yeah.
Mark Andrews isn't there, he is a top 5 tight end. And so I know it doesn't feel good to take those guys because you know that they're zeros to start the year, basically. Like you said, I think that Likely could catch some touchdowns with Andrews still active, but you're not going to be excited about him with
Right.
Andrews still healthy. But like we're talking about a guy who, as you see on your screen or for the audio listeners, is getting drafted in 61% of drafts. And like in the blink of an eye, one poor Mark Andrews injury is a top 5 tight end.
Yeah.
Like he basically just replaces Mark Andrews as a 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
And you can get him in the 18th round. And we do this with running backs, right? But we don't do it with tight ends. And so that's kind of why I brought up Hunter Henry is obviously not this situation, but we talked about Trey McBride and Noah Gray and Isaiah Likely. And it's one of those where I think it's a gap. And I think it's something that best ball does wrong, that we draft the certainty week 1 starters always over the contingent value bets. And at tight end, specifically, we haven't figured that out just yet, right? Like last year, we started to figure it out with running backs. Like Tony Pollard was going in the 6th round or whatever. And that was smart. We finally figured out like, hey, this guy's probably a good bet. But we haven't figured it out everywhere. And I think tight end's one of those we can take advantage of.
And my final point on it would be, I brought this up earlier, but the contingent value is higher for running backs. But when you have a backup tight end like Isaiah Likely, let's say he doesn't score a touchdown. Let's say he catches 4 balls for 40 yards, right? And he gets 6 points. Guess what? That 6 points is going to play a lot in your tight end spot over the year, as opposed to the running back that if, say Zeke goes to the Chargers and he gets 1 attempt for a touchdown and gets 6 yards. I mean, it gets the touchdown on 1 yard and gets the 6 points. Like probably not making your lineup, but 6 points from a tight end is going to make it a lot of the time based on the position as a whole. So the contingent value is still better for running backs, but guys that still have the opportunity to get on the field can still, bolster your team just a little bit and get you some, a couple points to keep you ahead of other people in your pod.
100%. And this is why late round tight end is excellent this year. I'm taking a lot of elite tight end because I'm drafting 0 running back teams, but I'm doing a lot of elite tight end. Like say I'm taking Kittle and then I have Lamar and then I'm taking Likely, right? You can put these strategies together. A couple things. One, I did just want to hit the comments here to close out. And
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, is there anyone that you are like way overweight on at the end of drafts, maybe that isn't getting drafted? Or is there anybody, that you've flag planted at the end of drafts?
I guess a little bit more than expected was the Trey McBride one, but other than
I guess,
that,
yeah.
I mean, I have 14% Isaiah Likely right now. I have 14% Noah Gray, but that's because of my Mahomes exposure. In terms of running backs, I've been grabbing a decent amount of Leonard Fournette for now, just because this is one of those. As soon as he gets drafted, he's going to move up, and then I'm probably not going to. I mean, not drafted. Once he gets signed to a team, if he goes to the Chargers or something, he's going to rocket up draft boards, and I'm just going to be fine with going from 30% to 4% by the end of the year. I'm not going to need him. Devin Singletary is a big one for me. He's not quite end of the draft, but that tail end of the draft, it's one guy in front of them. They actually do have one of the best offensive lines in the league. I still think he's going to get used. I think Singletary's probably a little undervalued at the moment. Do I love Devin Singletary? No, but I think the situation, the player, and everything works out that he can do something there. And then just the quarterbacks, right? So I mean, we're all in on Howell. I like Howell. I take Pickett when I take.
Are you also all in on Howell? What's your late round quarterback takes?
So Howell is one of my guys for the late quarterbacks. He's at my fourth highest owned quarterback right now at 14%. So I have quite a bit of Sam Howell. I have Ritter. Don't love Desmond Ritter, but I've drafted enough Drake London that if it has to be a 3 quarterback team, that I've been grabbing some Ritter. Same with Kenny Pickett. If I have, George Pickens, if I have Deontay Johnson over on DraftKings, I'll grab Pickett late. But that's kind of the stuff that I'm looking at for my late round stuff. But Sam Howell, we've had this discussion and we don't need to get into it, but I don't understand how anyone thinks that he's not going to be the starter for that team. And unless he's completely abysmal, he's going to get the season. Like I don't think the leash is going to be that short. I think he has to be real bad and the team has to be decent. So
I agree.
Don't get it.
I think so. I've actually drafted a lot of elite quarterback so far, but again, it's because I've drafted a lot of 0 running back teams, and you run into spots in the draft where you don't want to draft a running back because your strategy is 0 running back, and the wide receivers are like Mike Williams or whatever, right? So you take Lamar as an example. But I actually think part of that experiment that I've run led me into really a strong belief in some of the late round quarterbacks. And I was already very much into Sam Howell. I think that Sam Howell is like one of the potential biggest edges in all of best ball this year for the next couple of months before we start to learn things about camp. He could also be, of course, like a huge wasted pick, but that's what any edge has risk. And I think people misconstrue that a lot where they're like, well, but the downside is this. Like, have you ever had anything that was like a guaranteed profit that didn't have risk? Like,
right.
I never have. Like, you have to risk something to profit something. And Sam Howell is going in the last round of underdog drafts. He is a dual threat quarterback who ran for 800 plus yards in his last year at North Carolina. This is 800 plus yards where sacks count for negative in college, by the way. So this is 1,000 plus, and he took a lot of sacks, which is actually a flaw of his. But so he ran for 1,000 plus yards. He's an electric runner. And I mean electric in a way like Josh Allen is an electric runner. He's not Lamar, but he is a physical, big body running quarterback. And like, no one drafts him. And he has Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel. I don't really like Logan Thomas, but Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, a good offensive line, and Eric Bieniemy now as his offensive coordinator. And no one wants him. No one. And like, is there a risk? Absolutely. He was a 5th round pick. The NFL decided his junior year was overrated because he had apparently a bunch of shitty NFL players. Like this, people hold this against him. His junior year, so for anyone that doesn't know, at North Carolina, he had Javonte Williams and Michael Carter were his 2 running backs. They split the backfield. And then he had De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome, who both got drafted into the NFL. Tell me which one of those guys has proven to be a good NFL player. Right. Javonte, I guess, but also got hurt. Like, and so I feel like everyone is holding everything against Sam Howell, including the NFL, and like Jacoby Brissett is the competition,
right?
Like, when did we decide Jacoby Brissett was this like huge barrier to a young player playing with all this talent around him? So anyway, long story short, in my opinion, I've really tried to change my approach in player takes and really spot specific edges that I'm going to hammer, as opposed to having strong takes on like kind of every situation. But the problem is Sam Howell in this instance is one that I believe is a big edge. Damian Harris is my favorite edge in all of drafts, but I think from a quarterback perspective, Sam Howell is like the biggest edge that exists in all of best ball drafts. Like, if you whiff, whatever. It's an 18th round pick quarterback. Maybe you took him on a 3 quarterback team. Maybe you took him on an elite quarterback team. So be it. But I think Sam Howell is one of the biggest edges that exists in all of best ball drafts. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention him on a late round pick, show, because I really do think it's silly. It's absurd. Like Derek Carr goes in the 13th round and Sam Howell goes undrafted. Like that's stupid. That's dumb. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and a year that a lot of people are talking about doing the 3 quarterback build, why wouldn't he be a staple of that? And to go to your point, just to go your portfolio last year, and I'm not knocking on you, I'm just saying, like, to show the difference, you were high on Marcus Mariota last year, and you were high on, oh my God, I already drawn a blank on who was starting for the Steelers for the first quarter last year, Trubisky. And we knew that they had relatively short leashes because of who was behind them. And I just think it's the opposite situation where the young guy is starting, so he's going to get the longer leash. Doesn't mean it's going to work out. But to your point, the guy behind him is a guy that is trying to rival Josh Johnson.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah. He's trying to rival Josh Johnson to see who can be on the most NFL teams by the end of their career. Right. So, I mean, that's what it is. So, I mean, I just think that Howell is a great bet. Doesn't mean it's going to work out, but it feels right.
And the flip side is, so he feels to me like Daniel Jones of last year, except even cheaper, and the quarterbacks got priced up. So last year, as you said, the market said we can't draft Marcus Mariota, even though he's a dual threat quarterback with London and Kyle Pitts and Arthur Smith and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, what happens if the market's wrong about the Falcons and Marcus Mariota? And I know it didn't turn out, but it was real close. It was real close. They lost a couple early games that they could have won. And frankly, Mariota played bad. So the counter would be, well, I told you Marcus Mariota sucks. And that's fine. Same thing with Trubisky. He did suck. But Daniel Jones was the same argument with Sam Howell. He sucks. The offense sucks. I don't care that Brian Daboll's there, right? I can't draft him. And so he went in like the 15th round last year. Daniel Jones did. You look now, he's like a top 100 pick or a round pick 100. He actually might be underpriced still this year, given his upside. And he had Tyrod Taylor. What's his backup? Was Tyrod Taylor the answer to the Giants' problems? Of course not. Is Jacoby Brissett the answer to the Washington Commanders' problems? No, absolutely not. And so it feels like, I know Daniel Jones was the first
great comparison.
It's different in the nuances, but it's the same in that there's if Washington's going to get there with take the next step, it's not with Jacoby Brissett. It's with Sam Howell. And so they're going to give him every shot, just like the Giants gave Daniel Jones. And sometimes it works. And look, Daniel Jones was the best quarterback. Like we talk about everybody's like, who's the next Geno? Like, I would love to find the next Geno, but just give me the next Daniel Jones. Why do I care about finding Geno if I can find Daniel Jones? And we're giving you the next Daniel Jones with Sam Howell, but nobody wants to fucking take it.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree. So Howell has been, and Howell fits for both of my type of builds for the most part, either the 3 QB build or the second QB to the elite quarterback. It just slides in perfectly a lot of the time. So that's a guy I've been taking. I have a little above weight on him, but I'm not going crazy. But I think he's a great pick in that end of that. So I'm with you on that.
All right. We ranted about my guys now. Everybody in the chat got me triggered with shout out Mags. I love Mike Mags. And I wasn't even going to go into the Howell thing. And then he said, Howell explained. I don't know if he already knew this or if he knew he was triggering me. But either way, shout out Mags. Can we hit a couple really quick questions that I said I was going to hit? Brent asked, Brent, if you're still watching, James Robinson. he does fit this conversation we're having tonight. And so you're definitely a little bit more of the Patriots guy than me. Are you drafting any J-Rob?
I mean, why? Like, I'm not even sure he's going to make the team. I mean, maybe he does.
I got to look up his contract.
It's dust. Like the contract's not anything major. It's an easy cut. Like, I don't know. If he has something, I guess maybe.
Oh, there's no dead money.
Yeah.
Interesting. I actually didn't. That's the first time I looked it up. There's no dead money.
Right. So you can cut him and it doesn't matter. Like,
it's just fucking Pierre Strong season, dude. It's Pierre Strong season. I honestly thought J-Rob was like a veteran contract that was like a lock to make it. If he has no dead money, we don't draft him. I don't think you should.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, there's other situations in the league that are better, and I'm still not drafting the guy. I don't even want to bring it up right now. We'll bring it up in a later show. But yeah, I'm not touching James Robinson right now.
And then I missed it, but somebody mentioned. Oh, here we go. This is real gal.
Hold on. There's no fucking guarantee, Johnny Footballs, that James Robinson is making this team. Like he could definitely make the team. I'm not saying he doesn't, that it's 100% lock that he doesn't, but there's too many outs. And if they like the other guys, I mean, who are you going to keep? James Robinson or some of the younger guys? Right? He
could easily get cut, dude. So Ramondre is obviously a lock, right?
Yep.
They just drafted Pierre Strong and they just drafted Kevin Harris and Ty Montgomery. They have Ty Montgomery. At best, and then J-Rob. At best, 4 of those are going to make the team. J-Rob is a free cut. He has no dead money. Everyone else has dead money. So if it comes down to it and he doesn't prove himself over those other guys, who's getting cut? The guy with no dead money. Because dead money obviously rolls over, right? And like the point of cutting someone is to save the money. If you go into the season under the cap, it rolls over, blah, blah, blah. Or if you want to sign someone, you need the cap space. And like, if he's just not good, Ty Montgomery is still just there was just a quote, I think today in an ESPN article about how they're talking up Ty Montgomery, or maybe yesterday. Like, J-Rob is I would not draft J-Rob. Like, I'm not saying you have to draft Pierre Strong or Ty Montgomery or whatever, but I'm saying if you're going to draft a Patriots back, I would lean into these other guys. J-Rob is sketchy. We can see how the offseason plays out a little bit with some of these guys. I know this whole show is like trying to get out in front of these things, but J-Rob is he's not moving ADP wise. Like he ain't going. You can get him here for the rest of the summer.
That's a great point.
Yeah, you don't have to extend your risk that much. Whereas, like we just saw Jerome Ford. It's not even June, and Jerome Ford's into the 100s already, right? Like, but J-Rob, we don't have to worry about that with J-Rob, so we can be smart about it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to point out one more thing. You said, who said guarantee? You literally said, but he's making the team. Like, that was your literal sentence but he's making the team, which sounds like you really think he's going to be picked. I don't know. I'm just not touching J-Rob yet. That opinion can change. I'm not saying that I'm like locked in on that.
Dude, if he makes the team, he's running with the 2s in camp or whatever, like, we're allowed to adjust.
Yeah.
We're allowed to adjust. That's the whole point. But like right now, we have to make our decisions based on everything that we know at the current moment and try to project forward a little bit. And like, he's just one of those I'm not interested in.
Not yet.
Could be, but not yet. We will be back tomorrow. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. This was a lot of fun. We did not get to everyone we probably wanted to get to. So we'll come back with another, maybe like you said, a handcuff running back show next week to get into some of those guys. We will be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, our Tuesday kind of main show, the Spike Week Sickos. But Rob, anything that we need to hit on before we get out of here?
No, I think we hit on a lot of stuff, brought up a lot of interesting points, figured out our show for next week based on this show. So
yeah, shout out to the chat for helping us. Sometimes we're like, what should we talk about tonight? And we figured that one out already.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun. I actually I'll throw some time into researching some of those things, and we can talk about that next week. But yeah, that's it for me.
Hop in the Discord again. You guys were awesome in the chat. We appreciate you, but make sure you're heading over to the Discord where there's thousands of people talking best ball year round. And we'll be back tomorrow night, Spike Week Sickos, 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you guys then. Peace.
Peace. Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.